Hey everyone, before we get started, I want to let you know that if you're interested in supporting the work I do on YouTube, I opened a Patreon today for accepting donations. There's a link to my page below in the description if you're interested. Also, you can see it here on the screen. I did a write-up over there as well explaining all the whys, the where donations would go to, benefits you would have if you signed up over there, things like that. So go and check that out if you're interested. Again, the link is below in the description. I also have the PayPal still available, which I rarely talk about, but it's still available if you aren't interested in Patreon, but you still would like to donate. That's all. Now on to the review. Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. So today I'm going to be doing my review of Fables of the Feywild, which is DDO's 5th expansion. The expansion was released on November 4th, 2020. The expansion contains 13 quests. These consist of 10 mainline quests consisting of 2 chains and also 3 side quests. The expansion also includes a wilderness area, a new public area, and 1 raid, which has not been released. The raid's going to be released later, probably not for several months yet. So the quests themselves are levels 5 to 6 heroic, and they are level 32 legendary. If you don't know what the Feywild is, basically it is the land of fairy tales. So the expansion takes place in this very colorful land, which is full of pixies and unicorns and grandiose palaces. It has a very Alice in Wonderland psychedelic 60s type feel to it, so you can expect that kind of bright atmosphere. The expansion itself is very much the opposite, direct opposite of what Ravenloft was. So Ravenloft was a very dark gothic horror expansion for DDO, whereas the Feywild is very bright, very lighthearted, and very colorful. So you can expect kind of the opposite experience that Ravenloft had in that respect. The expansion includes new monsters like, as I mentioned, pixies, unicorns, displacer beasts, kushis, and also many other cosmetic variations of monsters we've seen before. The storyline of Fables of the Feywild, and I won't be going into any spoilers here, but in a very general sense, the storyline consists of, it deals with the hags we dealt with in the Lost Gatekeepers pack. They have stolen codex pages and taken them to the Feywild, and we need to get them back. We meet probably our primary antagonist, which is Hearsome, a satyr, and he wants to trade the codex pages to a mysterious figure who we haven't seen yet. I'm guessing that mysterious figure is going to be the raid boss, but we'll see. But in any case, Hearsome wants to trade these codex pages with this mysterious figure in exchange for a way to transform the Feywild back to its natural original state. And it's your job to stop all this. So that is, in a very general sense, the storyline. And the storyline gets into a lot of different little subplots. It's really deep. There's a lot of text in this expansion as you go through the quests. So some of you will like that. If you're really into the Feywild type lore in D&D, you're going to enjoy that a lot. There's a lot of references to that. There's even a lot of references throughout the quest, throughout the story, to fairy tales in general. There's a lot of stuff like that. But let's go ahead and start by going through the quest. So I'm going to give a brief summary of each quest. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first quest in the first chain is called the Endless Revels. It's a medium-length quest. In this quest, you're dealing with some loud partiers, and you're asked to kind of get them to leave. They aren't leaving because there's this figure that we meet, Lord Arden, who has been put to sleep by some nefarious means. And Lord Arden had told them that they can party as long as certain situation exists, basically. So your job is to go into this area and kind of get them to leave. So this quest involves a lot of finding different items you need to accomplish your objective. You have to go through several different locations to do this. It's more of a talking to NPCs type quest and kind of figuring out who to talk to, where to go, than it is a hack and slash. Now there is fighting in the quest, but it's a little more focused on kind of figuring out what to do in terms of the story. You got to think a little bit and actually pay attention to the dialogue a little bit to know what item to bring where to place where, things like that. Okay, let's move on to quest 2, which is Witch Hunt. This is a short to medium length quest. You're basically joining a hunt to try to track down one of these hags that we dealt with from the Lost Gatekeepers packs, one of these hags who was involved with the stealing of the codex pages, as I mentioned before. So in this quest, it's very open. It's not linear, it's open. You're in this small map. You need to track down the hag who's somewhere on the map, so you basically can chase her, and you've got to chase her and basically kill her. There's also an item that you'll find in this quest which is very important to the storyline, to this first chain, but I won't spoil that here, but you'll find that in this quest. There are several optionals in this quest that involve killing red names and also sealing portals so the hag can't get away. Other than that, though, the quest is fairly short, but it can be a little bit longer if you want to go after the optionals. Let's move on to quest 3, which is called Make Believe. It's a medium-length quest. The quest is about, you want to convince a nobleman to basically give you something you need to wake Lord Arden. So in this quest, you have 2 different sections. There's a village section and a tower section. You need to find 3 tokens to get entrance to the tower, which is where the quest finishes. And once you find these 3 tokens, you ascend the tower and basically finish the quest there. There is a fair bit of focus on the dialogue here in this quest as well. Okay, next is quest 4. This is called a Frosty Reception. It's a large quest where you're trying to find a flower which you need to help wake Lord Arden. So for this quest, you need to go to this large castle. Basically, you go to a ball to this large castle, and you have to seek out this baroness who might lead you to one of these flowers. This is a quest where there's not a lot of fighting. It's very narrative focused. You're kind of running around this large frost themed palace and trying to figure out, where to go, who to talk to kind of finish this part of the story. It's all about reading the dialogue, finding the next NPC. It's not so much about fighting, although there is some fighting here. But it's largely, in large part, it's in the same style of a quest like Violent Delights from Keep on the Borderlands, where you basically need to talk to the NPC, pay attention to the dialogue to know where to go next. Personally, this was my least favorite quest in this entire expansion. I found it kind of boring, especially if you don't know if you don't know the quest or you're going in blind. It's a thing where you're going to have to figure out where to go, and even with reading the NPC dialogue, it can be confusing. So it's just not one I particularly enjoyed. I found it a little bit boring, but as soon as you learn the quest, I'm sure it will be very much quicker and not a problem. It's just, for me, having a quest where you go from NPC to NPC just to kind of to read text. If you're not really into the story, which if you are into the story, it's going to be really entertaining. But if you're not totally into it, you might get a little bored here. But in any case, that's quest 4, a Frosty Reception. Okay, next we're going to move to quest 5, which is the final quest in the first part of the chain. It's called Wake Me Up Inside, and I'm kind of wondering if this quest name is a reference to the Evanescence song Bring Me to Life. But in any case, in this quest, you need to find ingredients on opposite sides of a small map and then proceed to an end fight. There's not much more to it than that. It's a very short quest. It's very pretty. The quest itself is located in the same area as the public area in Feywild. So that's kind of interesting. It is very pretty, but again, it's very short. Just go to each side of the map, find the item, then proceed to the end fight. Okay, now let's move on to quest 6. So quest 6 is called the Icemont Curse, and this is the first quest in the second chain. It's a medium-length quest. In this chain in particular, as I talked about before, the first chain is all about Lord Arden. This second chain is more about focusing on Hirsum, who's the main enemy here, and kind of dealing with him. In any case, quest 6, the Icemont Curse, is, in this one, you need to find a baron that's missing in Icemont Lodge. And you actually, right at the beginning of the quest, you meet a bear who promises to help you, but you need to collect 3 things for him first. And this is a theme we see several times throughout the Feywild expansion, is there's a quest where you need to do 3 things or find 3 items before someone will help you. And in this particular quest, these 3 different things are located on different areas of the map, and because of that, this is a quest probably more than any other where splitting the party up is going to cut down. It's going to make the quest a lot faster if that's the thing you want to do. But you certainly could, say, if you had a 6-man party, send 2 people each way and do each of the 3 objectives simultaneously if you wanted to. But after you kind of find the Baron, he has a secret that's going to help you in your fight against Hearsum. So not much more to say other than that, but it is a kind of a medium length quest. Let's move on to quest 7, which is called the Thornright. This is a short quest, one of the shortest in the expansion for sure. In this one, you need to find the Thornright, who's a wood woad, and he made something very special for Hearsum. You need to kind of go and confront him. There's not too much else to say here. You just kind of go, it's kind of a straight shot. Not straight in a literal sense, but it's very uncomplicated to get to the end. I'll just put it that way. The quest, other than just going straight to the Thornright, which you can do to finish the quest very quickly, there are some optionals here. So there's some optional with a Munmet you can do, but still, it's quite a short quest. And in contrast to the previous quest, this quest is quite cramped. So in the prior quests with things like the Icemont Curse or Frosty Reception, they were located in these big, open palaces or big open areas. This one is quite cramped in comparison. Okay, quest 8 is called Needle in a Phase Stack. It's a medium length quest. In this quest, you're trying to steal an item that's important to Hearsum, and you have to find the right chest where this item is hidden. So you're in this, again, it's kind of an open quest in kind of this medium, I would say medium-sized map. There's these chests that are hanging from trees everywhere, and you've got to find the right chest. And there's one chest that's the right one, and all the other ones may just contain a mimic. So you got to watch out for that. But there are some ways you can kind of deal with the mimic by just killing them, or you can, there's some skill checks you can go through to kind of get through them, like figure out what chest is the right ones through other means other than just killing all the mimics. So that's kind of interesting. This quest is another quest where at the end, there's actually a really interesting and very creative encounter by the developers here where you're dealing with a dragon. You need to play with a dragon. Okay, quest 9 is called Quid Pro Quo, which is another medium length quest. In this quest, you need to help the Prince of Frost gain a way to confront Hearsum. And this Prince of Frost you dealt with previously in the quest 4, which dealt with the kind of the Ice Palace. So you're going back to the same location as quest 4, which was a Frosty Reception. But this time you need to go, and you aren't going through the palace itself. He kind of presents you, the Prince of Frost presents you with 3 different dimension doors you need to go through to go to 3 different areas and deal with 3 different objectives. This is again a kind of another situation where you have to do 3 things before they're going to help you. This is a theme we see repeated here in the Feywild. There's an optional here that has you collecting notes that you need to figure out a magic word that you actually need to say in a chat command at a specific location to complete the optional. So that's interesting. We see this mechanic repeated in another quest later. Many of these 3 tasks involved in this quest of the 3 different areas have ways to complete them through combat or through peaceful means. I mean, some of these you can complete through skill checks, some you can complete through stealth. So there is more than just hack and slash here. Let's move on to quest number 10, which is called Immortality Lessons. So this is a large quest. In this quest, you again meet up with the Prince of Frost, who kind of gives you a way to confront Hearsum. So for this quest, you need to find 2 passwords to unlock a rooftop that brings you to the end fight where you can confront Hearsum. So these 2 passwords also use this mechanic of where you need to say them in chat. You need to type them in chat to open the door. There is a really interesting mechanic here that's unique to this quest, which involves playing a fiddle to open passageways, complete optionals, and even kill enemies. There's a part in this quest where you need to pick a dinner item, and the quest can be significantly longer or shorter if you decide you don't want to do this. So there's a huge part of the map that you can just completely ignore if you just want to finish the quest and not do the optionals. So this quest can be either very long and very large, or it can be relatively short. Okay, that is it for Chain 2, and that's all for the mainline quest. So let's move on now to the side quest. So the first side quest is called The Knight Who Cried Windmill. This is a very short quest. It's very funny. This was probably one of the most entertaining ones in terms of story. So you're dealing with a retired knight who seems to be going crazy, and they're reporting that a windmill is attacking. So you need to go find out what's going on here. There's a special combat mechanic, particularly with this quest. This quest basically consists of one boss fight, and it's very reminiscent of the raid Old Baba's Hut, if you're familiar with that. Let's move on to the second side quest, which is called The Legend of the Lost Locket. This is a short to medium quest. You're dealing with an NPC who has had his locket stolen, and you need to get it back. This is an underwater quest, very reminiscent of, say, the first part of the quest, Lost at Sea. You are underwater, and there's certain changes this has on your character. So, for example, the tooltip lists fire spells that should be doing less damage, and electric and sonic spells should be doing more damage. However, when I ran this quest, I found that my electric spells were just doing the same amount of damage, and my fire spells wouldn't work at all. So I don't know if that's intended, or if the bug is with the way it's working now, or if the bug is in the wording of the tooltip or the buff tip. But in any case, it does have some effect on you, particularly if you are someone who casts fire spells. You should be concerned about that a little bit. You don't have to worry about having an underwater action item for this quest. The NPC casts permanent underwater breathing on you when the quest starts. There is an interesting optional here with kind of a Simon Says puzzle, as well as a locked area with an extra chest. So this locked area, there are 2 keys hidden throughout the quest, and you can either find these 2 keys to unlock this optional, or if you have trap skills, you can apparently unlock them as well with open lock if you have that skill on your character. I looked around. I was not able to find these 2 keys anywhere in the quest, but I know they're there because I've seen other people talk about them, but they appear to be very well hidden. Side 3 in the last quest is called Combating Corruption, which is a kind of a short to medium length quest. So in this quest, you're dealing with someone who is corrupting the roots of a blessed tree, and you need to stop it. So the quest itself takes place in underground near the roots of this tree. So you've got to find out what's going on, what's affecting the roots of this tree. So you have to kind of go after the cause of this decay, which involves destroying a bunch of orbs. And that's kind of about it. There's not too much to the quest other than that. But it's another one of these kind of cramped underground quests that are very much in contrast to a quest like Frosty Reception, which is very open. All right, that's it for all the quests. A couple things I want to add on to that. The quests themselves, there are no teleport options, so you need to run through the adventure areas to all the quests. The only exception is the first quest, which is Wake Me Up Inside. Not the first quest, but one quest, Wake Me Up Inside, you access from within the public area, but all the other 12 quests you need to make runs to. Some of the runs are quite long, so you'll probably want to mount for that. The other thing I want to mention about the quests is that most of the quests contain a lot of optionals, and I didn't discuss the vast majority of those when I went through these brief explanations of these quests, so just keep that in mind. These quests can be a little bit longer if you want them to be. There's a lot of optionals here. Okay, before I finish with the quests, I want to talk about bugs for a second. There were a fair amount of bugs in this expansion as I play through it. Most of these are minor, such as text dialogue being off or an enemy just not moving quite correctly, but there were 2 quests, which were Immortality Lessons and Needle in a Face Stack, which is quest 8 and 10, where I ran into quest breaking bugs that did result in the quest being uncompletable, and I had to replay it. So just keep that in mind. I think the major ones, I'm sure they'll fix in a hot fix in the coming weeks, so it's something where I wouldn't be that concerned about it because it will be fixed. It's just you might want to possibly wait, if this is a big concern to you, a week or two for them to patch this before you get into playing Feywild. Let's move on now to loot. So in this expansion, there's something very important to note about the loot. So the developers, unlike in Sharn and Ravenloft, took a aimed stance to not do a power creep as part of this expansion. So they're aiming the loot to be kind of on par with what is already currently in the game as most powerful. So you will probably want to use, if you're really into min-maxing, you'll probably use some Sharn stuff in addition to some Feywild stuff. It's not like Sharn where all the Sharn stuff was just better than the Ravenloft stuff, and Ravenloft when that came out it was just better than other stuff in the game. That's not the case here necessarily. That's not to say that there's not a lot of loot here that's going to be best in slot. I'm sure there is. It's just not a situation where we can say absolutely that all the loot's going to be the best loot in the game and everyone, will for sure be wearing full Feywild stuff. It's not necessarily the case. You may still find yourself wearing your Sharn 3-piece set instead of converting everything to Feywild loot. So just keep that in mind. So that may, for those of you who are very pragmatic, very min-max focused, that could be something that's of concern to you. Okay, next, the loot offers 4 different set bonuses, which are unlike other set bonuses such as Sharn. So the way that the set bonuses in Feywild work is they work more like filigree in that they start out with a bonus for 2 set items, and for each additional item you add, the set bonus becomes better and better. So you can equip anywhere from 2 to 7 items in these various to get a various set bonus, and depending on how many items you have, the set bonus has more effects added to it. This is different. This is only for the legendary stuff. When it comes to the heroic loot, it's a lot simpler. The heroic loot only has 1 set bonus. So when it comes to the loot, you need to look at the loot list and determine how much of it you're going to want to use and how big of a deal it is for you that they're not aiming to do a power creep with this expansion like they did with Sharn. So it's really impossible for me to tell you if it's a must get in terms of loot. I mean, I'm sure, like I said, there's a lot of stuff here that's going to be best in slot. It's just a situation where you really need to look at the loot individually and see how big of a difference it's going to make for your character and how you're going to want to work it into your gear set. Okay, the next thing I need to point out is the raid. So the raid is currently not out. So the raid, they haven't given a specific date, but it sounds like it may not be here until 2021. So like the beginning of next year. So it's probably not going to come anytime soon. So just keep that in mind. The raid is something you're going to have to wait a little bit of time for. Another thing when it comes to the loot, there are also new augments, and there's also an augment system, which I won't go into. There's augment system pass as part of this expansion. So just keep that in mind, but there are more augments and as well as some minor artifacts to go after in addition to the name loot. Okay, next, let's talk about the wilderness area. So the wilderness area it's large, but it's not like super large. It's kind of a medium to large adventure area. It's certainly not as vast as something like, say, the Stormhorns was, but it's a fairly large area. As I mentioned before, there's no teleports to the quests, so all the quests require a run through except for one, which is I discussed before, which takes place in the public area. So the wilderness area contains classic style rare encounters, as well as 7 other encounters where you have to find Hearsome Satyr in specific places. I'm not sure how that's working. I looked all through the adventure area and I was only able to find one, which you find at the beginning. So I don't know quite what the deal is with that, but I did see those on the Wilderness Adventure map. So it also has Slayers like we have in the past. However, I'm not sure why they did this, but the Slayers are capped at 1,500. Instead of the usual 7,500, the cap is 1,500. I don't know if this is a bug, this is intended, what the reason is for doing this, but that's where it sits as of the time of this recording. The wilderness area has classic walk-up style explorer points, so you don't have the clickable ones like we see in something like the Demon Web or King's Forest. The wilderness area itself is beautifully done. There's a swamp area, and there's one area which is my favorite area, which is this tree, very large tree. There's an elevator you can use to get to the top of the tree, and also a winding path, and the tree is just very pretty. It contains kind of a pixie village there towards the top, where there's even a vendor, a rust shrine, and you can see some pixies kind of living there. So it's very pretty, very cool. When you enter the Feywild for the first time, you have to make a run to the public area, which is sort of like you had to do for Ravenloft. So just keep that in mind. There are chests in the Explorer area that dropped named Ferrocrystal weapons as in addition to ingredients to craft them. These Fey Crystal weapons are very similar to kind of the base Morning Lord weapons that you got from Ravenloft. I think they're very, very similar, if not the same in terms of stats, except the types of stats, the type of effect differs. They have Crystal DR bypass, but other than that, they're very similar to kind of what you would get in Ravenloft. They're kind of a quick kind of starter weapon you can get, and it's pretty easy to get those. They drop in all chests in the expansion, as well as ingredients to just craft one if you don't have the exact type you want drop for you. Okay, let's move on now to my final thoughts about the expansion. So the content quality offered here, it feels somewhat comparable to Sharn. So Sharn maybe had slightly more content overall, but Feywild's somewhere in the ballpark. I mean, Sharn did have more quests, but the quests here in Feywild, but some being short, are generally longer than Sharn, which had, for example, the Cogs quests, which were extremely short. So I would say the content is probably slightly less than we got with Ravenloft or Sharn, but very close, and it's in that proximity. So Feywild will only have one raid as opposed to two that we saw in Ravenloft and Sharn, which is definitely a strike against Feywild in terms of just quantity of content we're getting, because they are charging the same price for Feywild as they did for the previous two expansions. So Feywild's quests, 12 out of 13 of them, as I mentioned before, do require running through the adventure area, so it could take you more time to complete, potentially. The complexity of the quests feels about on par with that of Sharn. Maybe slightly simpler than Sharn, definitely simpler than Ravenloft, I would say, but it's somewhere in that vicinity. DDO has been pretty consistent with their expansions with the type of content offered in this regard. Personally, when it comes to the quality of the quests, I personally enjoyed Sharn and Ravenloft stories more. The Feywild story was kind of hard for me to follow. I mean, I'm someone who doesn't know a ton about D&D lore when it comes to the Feywild, so I'm sure if you're familiar with it, you'll be able to follow it a lot better than I did. But for me, I kind of found it confusing, even though the general story was easy to understand in general what was going on. A lot of the subplots and a lot of the language was a bit confusing to me. Although, and there is also just a lot of text in general in this expansion to read. The quests were fun, but I think they were fun and solid, and they were very good. But there really wasn't anything in the quest that just blew me away in terms of new mechanics or new style of mobs to fight or new encounters, anything like that. But they were solid. They also didn't contain anything that was annoying. So say something like the source sleds in Sharn, which I think most people found kind of an annoying mechanic. They didn't involve anything like that either. So it's consistent, solid content. Now, on a positive note, I have to say the best thing that the Feywild has going for it is absolutely gorgeous. The art team really outdid themselves in this one. I mean, Feywild is just a visual treat the whole way. It just looks so good. I mean, everything from the wilderness area to the pixie village in the wilderness area to all the different locations in the quest, the grandiose castles. They did a really stellar job in crafting a world that's immersive and just beautiful to look at. I felt in terms of immersion, this definitely surpassed Sharn. Even though I didn't quite like the story as much as Sharn, didn't find it quite as interesting, I just felt like when I was playing it, I generally just felt like I was actually in a different world. So it was very good in that regard. I think it helped a lot in regards to I'm a fan, as you all know, of the wilderness areas, you having to kind of run through them. So I think that part of it kind of made me feel a little more immersed, like a little bit more like I was going to these places, like having to find this castle to seek out Hirsum. I felt a little more like I was actually going on an adventure than I did for something like Sharn, where we just kind of accessed everything from the public area for the most part, aside from the Cogs quest. So it was really good in that regard. So I would say that even if the quantity of content's a little bit less than Sharn, I think the immersion factor here is definitely better than Sharn. One thing that, from a strictly pragmatic view, that the expansion does have going against it, again, is the loot. So it's not as appealing as Sharn was, just in just a plain flat pragmatic sense in terms of loot, because it's not as must have as Sharn is. Like when Sharn came out, those Sharn sets were really appealing to people. They're really powerful. So there's nothing I don't think like that in Sharn and Feywild. Feywild does have its loot sets, but as I mentioned before, they're not aiming for a big power jump over Sharn here. They're aiming more for it to be on the same par as the loot from the most powerful loot in the game currently is the stuff from Sharn. So overall, I think the expansion is a great addition to the game. It's gorgeous. It's well designed. While not being mind blowing, it's not poorly designed in any manner. I can't think of really any quest, but maybe one that I didn't like. I really enjoyed almost all of them. Really, it's in line. I think overall, it's somewhat in line with Sharn in terms of the overall quantity when you take into effect all factors. So I don't think it's as good as Ravenloft was if you're just looking for me to rank the expansions, but it's somewhere it's somewhere in the middle. It's certainly better than something like Shadowfell. So it's kind of in the middle in terms of how good the expansion was. You could probably debate between this and Sharn, which is better, depending on what you like most out of your expansions. If you like loot, or if you like immersion, if you like more of a steampunk type atmosphere versus a kind of a colorful fairy tale land type atmosphere. It's really kind of up to you, but I can certainly see it kind of being on the same level as Sharn in terms of quality overall. In terms of should you buy it, I would say yes, but definitely yes, but maybe wait a few weeks to give them time to polish it. As I mentioned before, there are quite a few bugs on release, so it might need a little bit more time in the oven. So you might want to wait for certain bugs to be patched out before you buy, but certainly buy. I mean, it's available over on the DDO market for $40 if you want to just go for the basic bundle, and there's 2 other bundles offered which are more expensive but offer more stuff. So guys, that's going to be it for this video. If you've played the expansion already, please comment below and let me know what you think about it. If you liked it, if you didn't like it. That's going to be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. I will see you next time. Have a good one and take care.